We are live. All right. Welcome to Goddess Vibrations, the sexual, spiritual empowerment show. I am here with my sister goddess and guest today, Heather. And Heather she does a lot of things. I will let her introduce herself in a minute, but we are going to talk about how to tell the truth about your desires and relationships. And I want you all to know the reason why I invited her on is she did a really amazing post, I don't know, a few weeks back, maybe a month or so ago, where she was talking about when she goes on a first date, she just lets it all hang out and she's her authentic self. And sometimes people don't like that, but she's okay with that because that sort of weeds them out. And I was reading that post like, wow, I wish everybody would do that, because I've wasted so much time, conversations, dates, even full-blown relationships for months. And then you come to find out that that person is not who they said they were. They're trying to figure out who I wanted and then become that, because they just wanted to see what it would be like to date me or to have sex with me or to be, in a relationship or try this lifestyle or try this or get healthier or get therapy or whatever else. And I think what was really beautiful about your post too is that it's like, gosh, you know what? It's not our responsibility when somebody doesn't show up as their authentic self. We, if we got duped or fooled or whatever else, there's certain red flags that you can pay attention to, but you never really know until you know. So when you know, then you do something about it. And I think we could all just be a lot happier if we were ourselves.
Very true.
Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do, the kind of work that you do. Let the people know. And I'm going to adjust my screen here while you do that.
So my name is Heather Ray Dawn, and I'm a relationship and intimacy coach for couples. And I'm also an empowerment and pleasure coach for women. I teach a number of different kinds of classes, anywhere from communication to different styles of massage for pleasure, for therapeutic reasons, for healing, for pleasure, to even combining kink and sacred sexuality together. I've been a relationship and intimacy coach and teacher for 19, 20 years now, and it's been such a joy and a pleasure to be supporting people for so long. And last month I went to my next level and created a new video on yoni massage for couples, and women can use it as well to support themselves in healing, and it's like so beautiful. So that's who I am.
Thank you for bringing that up. I purchased the video, pre-ordered.
Yes, you did.
And, I'm very excited to dive in. I'm ready. We'll just say that. But it really, like I was saying before we went live, it does feed into next week's topic, which is all about orgasmic energy, and especially that orgasmic energy that we cultivate ourselves as women, in solo practice or all the many ways. You and I have been on the path for a while of cultivating this energy, helping others with this. Just today, I had a new aha. I'm really into astrology, that I have Jupiter in the 8th house, which is sex, death, transformation. It's all the Scorpio stuff. Jupiter expands, those things. And it said in there, you could actually have quite a bit of money or earn quite a bit of money or be wealthy in this lifetime. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm only halfway through life, so we still have some time. But I thought about it and I was like, what is wealth? It's second chakra. It's your sexual energy. It's your orgasmicness and being able to turn the pilot light up and down at will. Some people are just born with a bunch and it's overflowing, and it's like, here, you have some, but to really be able to turn it up or turn it down. And I think people that have really truly mastered abundance, and I'm not going to say just financial, but abundance in all ways, are the people that are very skilled at turning it up when they need to, and then maybe not turning it down, but being like, okay, when it's down, or maybe it is turning it down so that people, you're safe, you're protected, people aren't trying to get something from you in certain situations. So I think that's all, it's all tied in.
I have a different relationship with the chakras. Money is the first chakra, which is where your your tailbone is, and your anus is. Your second chakra is your sexual chakra, and your first chakra, that's your grounding. It's your stability. It's the thing that roots you down into Mother Earth. It's the thing that, you know, when your world gets rocked and you feel unstable, it's because of what's going on in your first chakra. The second chakra supports. It's right next to it. It supports with the creativity, and it brings it alive and stuff like that. It's actually what helps manifest it, but it actually comes from the first chakra in my studies.
Well, yeah, also it aligns with astrology too, because the first 6 houses, so the first house would be Aries, right? And that's, again, like that first chakra or the support. Second house is Taurus, which is, it takes it to a deeper level, which can, you know, and then when you start over, so the 8th house is actually, that's like kind of like mirrors the second house. So that's why like Taurus and Scorpio are opposites, right? It's kind of like the second house all over again, but on the other end of the spectrum. So it's interesting how, you know, even the astrological signs match up with the chakras, or at least, you know, I know there's more chakras. Some people say 11, 12 even, or infinity, but there's more chakras than probably houses. But yeah, very interesting how it all aligns. So tell us a little bit about being your authentic self, what, maybe letting it all hang out in your work with couples, because you've been working with couples, singles for a long time. Who do you think has a harder time with this, being authentic, men or women?
I think it depends on a lot of things. I think it depends on how they were raised. It's not a male female yin yang thing. I think a lot of women, I talk to a lot of women, and they think they need to present themselves a certain way. Certain, you know, and it's like certain men feel like they need to present themselves a certain way because of the way they were raised. I would say it probably leans a little bit more towards women, but at the same time, it's like we were, you know, raised to impress, to be pretty, to, you know, possibly put our makeup on, our hair and all this stuff, and to not get angry and not to show this emotion or that emotion. And when we do our inner work and realize like we can just be ourselves and the person will like us for who we are, it shifts everything. But, you know, we have to get to a point of awareness to go, can I show up in cut-off jeans and a t-shirt and know that I'm okay? And if he doesn't like it, oh well, or him, you know, stuff like that. Or, you know, it's like so many people have an image of like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and they don't look outside that image, and then that shifts everything. So it's like everybody's trying to present, most people are trying to present a certain image so they can bring in, to seduce, to call in this certain kind of person. But when most women or men, when I look at them over the long term, I'm like, can you imagine the long term being with this person you have in your mind? You know, it means you're always going to be, you know, like if a man really wants to be with a woman who is always dressed up and always in heels and always with makeup, are they going to be willing to be waiting for her to get ready all the time, or her have to get up an extra hour to get ready? Most men, they don't like waiting. It's like, but if you went with somebody who did that, you're going to have to be waiting, or you're going to have to get the alarm. And there's just so many different aspects and avenues of looking at what you think you want and looking at what you do want. And then also, how, you know, do you really want to present yourself some way, and then gradually over the next 6 months unravel who you presented yourself as the first month? Because sometimes that's really hard. What if I tell him that this, or I went through this traumatic thing, or what if I told him that I eat this kind of food, or what if I told him I watched that TV show? What if I, you know, or, you know, what if I told her I don't make, you know, 6 digits? What if I told her I didn't, you know, but I have to have the suit and I have to have the tie and I have to look this certain way, when really I see so many couples that said, I would never have thought I would have married that person. If you would have laid them out on in a group, in a dating app, anything, I would have said, no way. But as I got to know him, I realized he was it. Because they got to know the personality instead of all the checklists. And they realized that person is what they needed opposed to what they wanted. And there's a huge difference between want and need.
And there's a huge difference between what people say and what they do. You know, not everybody is aligned and embodied in that way. So they might say they do these things or want this, but they haven't actually stepped into that version of themselves or that desire of themselves yet.
And that is for us individually to tap into our intuition to go, does this feel in alignment? Because a lot of times we second guess ourselves. Like somebody says, oh, I love meditating, I'm a vegan or a vegetarian, or I'm da-da-da-da, or they don't say anything. It's like, you know, and you just think that they're X, Y, and Z, and the person lets you believe that, even if you may or may not have talked about it. You know, it's like I had an ex-boyfriend years ago that he never told me he was a vegetarian. We would go out to meals and he's like, oh, can we just get a vegetarian dish and a meat dish? I'm like, sure. He would eat both. I found out 2 years later he was a vegetarian after we'd broken up. And it's like, he never told me that. You know, it's just like, but it's like, I also knew certain things about his personality that I was questioning whether or not I could live with. Like, I knew he because I asked the right questions. People are so scared of asking questions, afraid they're going to scare the person off. I'm always asking questions. I'm curious. And those questions keep me out of trouble. And so what happened is I knew that he had an issue with lying about the little things, not the big things. And it's like, you know, I'd catch him in these teeny tiny little lies. And I'd be like, why are you doing this? He's like, I don't know. I have so much, I don't know. He couldn't even tell me. I finally had to name it. I'm like, you have shame? He's like, yeah, I have shame. Oh my God, it would have taken me hours to tell you that I have a shame. You know, but it's like, ask the questions. Find out and feel into the person to see if they're speaking the truth. Oh, you like meditation? Great. How often do you meditate a day? For how long? Oh, well, you know, I probably meditated, well, I want to meditate. Well, that tells you something. The body language, they're not looking at you, their body kind of does weird things, and that's telling you something, and it's for you to listen and then ask more questions.
Yeah, I think, you know, what you were saying earlier about, oh, I don't want them to know this about me, or what if they find out this? I think I'm at that age in my life where there's really no dark shadows or corners that I'm ashamed or afraid of somebody knowing. It's more like, oh, wait till he finds out about this side of me, you know, like he doesn't know what he's getting into. And that's primarily what I'm thinking, especially if you've only been on one date with somebody or 2 dates and like, oh man, you're like my dream woman. And it's like, how can you possibly know? You can't, you know, because yes, asking the right questions, yes, turning, you know, listening to your intuition, but also sometimes it just takes time and being in different scenarios. You know, I was in a marriage for 8 years and I didn't fully see the person I was married to and had 2 children with, because there was always a lot of distance that he created to put between us and to avoid that intimacy. You know, and so you can't always know. I guess what I want people to gather as they're watching this is not to blame themselves for having been in these situations where somebody, you know, isn't what they thought originally, because there's another process that's going on, which I feel obligated to speak about, being a licensed marriage and family therapist, and that's the projection process. And we are always projecting all of the time what we think we see, or what we want to see. I was at a workshop a few days ago and we did a sensory experiment, and I was blindfolded, and my partner had to like use 2 objects to like, I guess, like to engage with my senses and to kind of like bring about this feeling of anticipation and surprise and see how I handled that, right? And what she originally did was the 2 items were rosemary and ice. When she put the ice on my wrist, which was kind of her so that it wasn't too much of a shock, I did not recognize it as ice. I thought it was lotion. I just could feel that there was something kind of liquidy. And then I felt drips on my foot, which was underneath my wrist. And I was like, what on earth is dripping on me? I still did not recognize it as ice. And it wasn't until later on when she put it on my neck that I was like, oh, like I jumped, and then I recognized it as ice, right? And it was really amazing to me. And then the rosemary too, she originally put that under my nose, but I didn't smell it. It wasn't until I felt the texture of it in the palm of my hand that I could tell it was in a shape that it was rosemary. So I thought it was some kind of perfume. And so it was interesting for me to be shown that my perceptions are not always as accurate as I think they are, because there's a projection involved in how we sense the world based on our prior data or information or experiences, right? And so to always just stay curious, stay curious, stay curious, stay curious, right? And yeah, a really powerful experience. So what advice do you have?
First of all, I want to back up, because you said something about blame and then you went into projection. And I have a huge distinction between blaming oneself and taking responsibility. It's like, no, don't blame yourself. Blame yourself because it's a beating yourself up, which is a not a healthy thing. But it's taking responsibility for the parts that you can take responsibility for. There's so much anger and breakups because nobody was willing to take responsibility. It doesn't mean let's blame the self. Let's take responsibility that I saw this a long time ago. Women take months, if not years, to break up with somebody, to split up. They know years, months ahead of time that it's not working because of X, Y, and Z. And then they take that long and they say, I've wasted this many years on this person, when really the last 3 years you knew it wasn't going to work. So that's where we can take responsibility. I take responsibility that I knew it was over a long time ago, and I could have only given him 5 of those years instead of 8, and yeah, so that's one thing. It's like this is why when I talk to people about communication, it's so vital to like, what can you take responsibility for that is not theirs, and then the projection, it's like we're always like, while we're listening to somebody, we have all these filters that say, oh wait, I heard this, wait. And that's, and then it's like, then you have to distinguish, did you really hear that? Or did some filter grab it, twist it around, and then make it something else? And it's like, we have to really be mindful of like, that's why one of the communication practices I do, I have people like, you have to repeat back what the person says, because so many times when we're doing that, the person says something different. The other person has to say whether or not that was correct. And they're like, that's not totally correct. This is what I actually said. And it's like, our listening is so different. And, our senses, when we have the sight taken away, different senses are heightened, and we're trying to like find like, what is this? Wait a second. It's curious. And like, and yeah, there is some interesting thing. I've never looked at it as projection, but it's when we take away one sense, all the other ones get heightened, but we don't always necessarily know exactly what that thing is. I've done that practice like I don't know how many times, and people are like, that was a strawberry? Really? I didn't know that until it was going down my throat and the juices were there. And I'm like, yep, I would have never guessed. And it's like, it's kind of fun. I mean, I like doing that for waking up the senses more than distinguishing projections, but yeah. It's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's related to blaming the self or staying away from that and moving more into the present and the future, is like knowing that projection is a natural human process. You can't really get out of it. The idea is to be aware that we're always projecting. So as long as we're aware that we're always projecting, that does help us take some responsibility for, even like, we're like, whoa, that person didn't show up authentically. Is that fully true? Or is it also true that we saw something else that we wanted to see? right? And we just were like, no, they're this, this is what I think they are, you know, and that's what we wanted to see. So that's what we kept reinforcing. And I think in my case, in my marriage, I was really big into narrative theory, creating the story, you know, it's like creating the story of what you want. And so I was like, oh, he's this, or he can do this, or it's this. And then at a certain point I had to be like, pew, pew, pew. Like, no, he's never going to be that. Like, you're the only one doing the work. So for me, like, my distinction in, is a relationship going to change? Because we can think and perceive in a certain moment, in a certain context or a certain storm, that this relationship isn't going to work. But we do second guess ourselves because there's two people, there's two dynamics involved. And how can we be absolutely 100% certain that that can't shift? The only way that I've known in my own personal experiences and helping couples through, or helping individuals through relationships, is that you know it's not going to work with 100% certainty when you're the only one showing up to do the work, right? And that's just kind of like the only no-brainer one that I can offer people. But I feel like there's so many other things that, you know, they can be in flux. And I guess just like that checklist that you have for all the qualities that you want in your ideal partner, sometimes those checklists don't work, even for like, he should do this, or he should be kind, or he should this, what's he do, you know. I have a friend, a therapist also, who wrote a book on this, about how to find your perfect match, and she divorced her husband after you know, releasing the book. It's not always, it doesn't always work, right? It's interesting that way.
Well, the lists only go so far, and then you have to work with the personality that goes with it. You know, the fact is, like, I see a lot of people. So it's funny because, like, when you get into the science of the male brain and the female brain, or the masculine brain and feminine brain, the masculine typically meets a woman, and he wants her to be exactly who she is, who he's met, and doesn't want her to change because he's comfortable. He loves her. Then what happens is that women look at a man and go, I want him, but let me see, I can fix this and this and this. We need to change this and this and this. And they don't look at only exactly who he is. They look at his possibility of what he could change into. And that's where things start getting really hairy, is the men don't want women to change, and the women are typically always wanting to change, and the women are wanting the man to change and think he'll shift and change, and they're not accepting the man for exactly who he is. And so then there's a conflict. And so when I'm coaching couples, when I'm working with them, it's like I'm getting them to ask each other really deep, intimate questions of, like, what are their wants? What are their desires? What are their needs? What are they really feeling? Getting tapped really into what are they feeling? What are they needing right here, right now? What are they needing to hear from their partner? What are they missing out from their partner, not knowing that their partner is doing X, Y, and Z to show them they love them, but the other person's not seeing it, because then that goes into love language, and that goes into different areas and stuff like this. And so there's a lot of things, like, if you don't give somebody their love language, they're always going to think that they're starving. They're always going to feel like they're starving, even though you've given them the other 4 love languages completely. But if you haven't given them their primary, they're always going to feel like they're not loved. And you have to find that out. So I'm breaking down love languages with them. I'm breaking all of this stuff down. And so, especially when somebody's before they're married, it's really beautiful to kind of come in and like really get clear on what they're both wanting. I had a couple years ago come to me, and she came in and she says, I want a baby. And he's like, I want to travel the world. And she was just like, I don't want to travel the world. I want to have a baby. And it's like, and it's just like the progress of like working that out and finding out she didn't know certain things about him that in my mind, I'm like, you didn't know that? And he never knew she wanted to have a baby. They worked it out. We sat there and talked it out through like a few sessions until they figured out a win-win for both of them. And it was like so beautiful, and it worked. She got what she wanted. He got what he wanted. And all of a sudden it was like, boom, everything exploded open. But they would have never gotten there if certain questions weren't asked, if the space wasn't held, if they didn't really get truthful with themselves and be able to share that with their partner. And they weren't even married. I don't think they ever got married, but they kept the partnership going for, I don't know, they might still be together now. This was like 15 years ago. But it's like so amazing when they have a baby. Yes, beautiful baby girl. But it's amazing to like have everything, ask the right questions so you can get what you want. And even in dating, it's like being your authentic self, being in that scary place of like, I'm going to share something really vulnerable, you know, having that all show up. Or be your goofy self, your silly self, your serious self, the person that cries, the person that's very intense, you know, having all those sides show up. Like I tell people, like, it's something that I just did naturally. I don't know where it came from, but in the first 6 weeks of my, you know, most people's first 6 weeks are all about the honeymoon and making love all the time and finding different positions and and all this stuff. For me, the first 6 weeks is like, I'm going to show you my full and complete self. If you can handle it, then after 6 weeks, everything gets so much easier because you've already seen all of my crap. And then what happens, like with one of my exes, then as soon as I was done, and about a week later, he realized like, oh, she's totally peaceful now. She's totally like herself in a different capacity because she showed me everything. Then he went through his process. And then it was like after he went through his process, then we came together and we already knew all of each other's junk. Our shadow side, our stories, our history, you don't know everything, but you know the stuff that bothers you on the surface and a little deeper. And then it's like all you have to do is like then work out how to work those together, and then you go forward. But most people are so busy hiding those things until 6 months in, then you don't know who you're dating, and then it's like, oh, then it's like, now you just wasted 6 months of your life being somebody you're not, that person, you know, doesn't want to live with. Like, if you want children, you really should be dating somebody that wants children. Like, if I'm swiping on an app, you know, if you're swiping on a dating app and you don't want kids and you see somebody wants kids, swipe left. Don't do that. That's non-negotiable.
Or just be authentic about what you're on that app for. You know, I posted something about that in my story this past week. It's like, if you just want a friend to talk to, you want a pen pal, you want sex, you want companionship, it's just like, be freaking honest. You have a better chance of getting it, you know. But I think most men, especially, they think they're going to get a smack in the face if they say they just want this, or they just want that, or they're just looking for this. But, you know, we want to know. Yeah.
And women forget to ask. Like, I've talked to so many women that are on the dating apps, and they go, I can't ask him. I'll wait until I meet him, and then I'll ask him what he's done there for. I'm like, why are you wasting either one of yours time? I always ask, what do you want here for? If it doesn't say in the bio, and a lot of times I'll ask anyway, because the fact is, like, what they say in a bio and what they'll say, you know, in a message privately, sometimes it's completely different. Oh, I'm really looking for a booty call. Like, great. I'm not your girl. Thank you for being and I always thank them, because men want to be appreciated, and it also encourages them to tell the truth more instead of beating them up for like, oh, you want that? Ew. It's like, you know, they want what they want. Just like what you want is what you want. Ask the questions that are important before you meet. Even though I will say there's many times that I've worked with couples that it's like they weren't looking for a relationship. They were looking for, and they started out as sex buddies, and it grew into they were definitely life partners. And that could be the case. But most time when somebody is saying something, I say believe them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you say about the masculine feminine brain, because that really explains why, you know, this phenomena of women kind of building a man and staying with him and helping him build his career, and then he trades her in for a younger model. So if he's not wanting a woman to change, you know, and there's that book, I think it was Attached. Was it Attached? No, it was Love Factually. It was called Love Factually. It was a social scientist researcher, and she was having a hard time, or no, she was a different kind of researcher, but she was having a hard time dating. So she did some social science research about, dating statistics. And she found that most men prize a woman and prioritize beauty and youth. And most women prioritize power and money. And it doesn't say that that's everyone, but that is the tendency. So she was kind of saying, kind of like what you were saying, if you want, if you're a man, let's say you want beauty and youth, then you better have power and money, to attract that in. If you are a woman and you want power and money and you're a man, then maybe you might need beauty and youth, like she's like, it's not fair, but that's just what the data is saying. That's all I'm reporting, don't kill the messenger. Yeah. So it's interesting to learn things like that. And then you look at biological things. Like I read that the egg, when the sperm comes in, if it's damaged in any way, after it starts to go into the layers of the egg will actually repair the sperm before it enters in and accepts it to create a baby. So it just, again, women's tendency to want to fix a man before, or during the courtship process, before she actually procreates with him or marries him. It seems to be, it can be like a biological urge, especially as nurturers. And women in this book too, of the Love Factually, it was saying, women tend to be more forgiving of looks. Like they're not as, they're not, that's not their primary thing with a man. That's not what they're primarily attracted to. However, I kind of feel like in my partners too, like I put a lot of energy into my mental, physical, and spiritual health. That's a priority for me. So I desire a partner that does the same, because it's a lifestyle choice. And so it's like, if you like the way that I look, or you like that I'm healthy, then you do the same thing. Like give me that back too, because that is a priority of mine. So it's interesting that that sometimes we can be mismatched in that way too. And like I said, it's not always fair what's out there, but it's what we're aware of and what we're working with. And same as you, I've also heard so many stories about people's, starting off with one intention and ending up in another. And I guess that does speak to, perhaps soulmates. It does speak to perhaps, people meet in different ways. Some people just know instantly. Some people, they start with friends and they develop into that. I know that when I look back, my healthiest relationships were friends. We were friends first and we developed into a relationship, but those were not the ones that lasted. They didn't last because and always in those relationships where I started as friends, we ended as friends. I lost my passion.